Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists, all of who are absolute experts. So I qualify whatever I'm going to say as words coming out of a layman. So please read the red herring prospectus carefully before investing your mind into what I'm going to say. But a couple of things that Monica gave an excellent introduction about, but slight disagreement. When she said if you weak of heart, don't. Invest in stock markets right now because invest somewhere else. Well, ultimately I think if the stock market crashes, then your money is not safe anywhere, because as we know from the Great Depression, I mean, you had bank runs, and of course if the stock market crashes, then the banks also lower their interest rates, so FDs also. So basically everyone's going to be hurt if the stocks crash sooner or later, sometimes sooner more than later. Secondly, I really applaud couple of panelists out here, Rajiv and Monica, telling the reality, because this same government couple of days ago was berating in very derisory way our job creators, wonderful entrepreneurs, youngsters who are making these startups. And the fact of the matter is, if we have 75% of our labor force as unskilled, it is because of this government. So I don't know where this hubris and taunting is coming from. If we have 44% of our labor force involved in agriculture, that is contributing only 14% of the GDP, it's because of the government. If we have 56% of our graduates being unemployable, it is because of the government. So set your own house right before you criticize job creators who are delivery boys or whatever it may be. So that's point number two. Now let me come to this, and I speak as a layman. I want to go to the layer that is a little bit beyond the immediate, because I want to talk about something that I, as a layman, am thinking for the last couple of days. And I'm thinking this one question: why was there no market bloodbath when Canada slapped 298% and the EU 50% tariff on US products? If nations trading with America have deployed high tariffs to protect their jobs and business interests, then why is America not within its rights to deploy reciprocal tariffs? Canada and the EU can protect their jobs and businesses, but not America. Isn't that hypocritical? Look, there are 2 points here very briefly that I'd like to speak on briefly. Rahul, I remain an advocate of free trade and globalization, because that is the only way of eradicating poverty and making humanity more prosperous and equal. And so I'm fundamentally against tariffs and quotas because they encourage protectionism and license raj. This time round, the fact is Trump is even more virulently America first, more virulently anti-globalization, more virulently anti-Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. He is choosing tariffs over talent, and therefore, although in the short run, this might help America, because through protectionism and high tariffs and quotas, Trump will create more jobs for Americans, more domestic growth and setting up of factories, protectionism, lower imports. In the long run, it doesn't help, because high tariffs and protectionism will result in what they've always resulted in: a socialist trap that ultimately destroys a country's economy through less choice for consumers, outdated technology, increasing friction with other countries, and higher prices because of lack of competition and rule of monopoly. Remember Ambassador's cars and Campa Cola? In short, protectionism is against Darwinian evolution, whose overarching fundamentalist spirit of competition enabling survival of the fittest. But here I come to the second point. In taking to the spirit of competition and free trade, one cannot also allow unfair trade practices and dumping of goods. Those opposing Trump now were fine with Canada and the EU slapping 50 to 300% tariff on American goods. And as far as the problem of unfair trade practice is concerned, I think Modi did a great job to pull out of RCEP, which was effectively a free trade agreement with China, a known currency manipulator that props up its companies underhand indulging in unfair trade practices. Therefore, in the long run, tariffs are harmful and counterproductive, but they are an effective measure to check unfair trade practices. Besides, the extent of tariffs is decided by WTO, erstwhile the GATT, and nations come to mutually agreed upon rates. The ultimate goal, Rahul, is a level and free playing field that encourages competition, respects and rewards intellectual property, and gives consumers a choice at a reasonable cost. High tariffs don't do any of these three things. Finally, very important, all things being equal, imposing tariffs by a developing country on identical goods being imported from a developed country is superfluous, Rahul, because that product of the same quality and standard is being made in the developed world by someone earning 10 times the wages. And so when the product is sold in the developing world, its cost would naturally be higher and consumers would naturally choose a domestic product. For example, a simple pencil of identical quality made in America will sell at a much higher price than its Indian equivalent in India, because the American who made it is given much higher wages. Problem comes When Americans decide they want cheaper pencils and start choosing pencils made in developing country, or their American pencil manufacturer begins getting its pencils made in a developing country to avoid paying higher wages, ultimately it's about graduating to higher quality, more tech, more IP demanding jobs. Just 30 seconds. Free markets and free trade is the best arbiter, Rahul. Did you know, for example, that Japan does not impose any tariffs on American cars? Because Japanese don't want to buy American cars as they are not as good as non-American cars. In fact, it is America that imposes tariffs on Japanese car makers, and yet Japanese car makers have roughly the same market share as American car makers in America. Look, let us not reinvent the wheel here. Protectionism is bad, period. Darwin said so, and Darwin is always right.
Well, look,